If it's Wednesday, an extraordinary divide is developing inside the GOP and the most consequential clash so far amongst 2024 GOP hopefuls over whether the United States should help Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Plus, global bank turmoil roils the markets today as shares of the global banking giant Credit Suisse plummet, prompting the Swiss National Bank to step in if needed. It's amid a stock sell-off that's raising fears of a wider contagion in the financial markets. And the first hearing today in a Texas case that could limit access nationwide to a widely used abortion pill, in a move the FDA is calling unprecedented. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Chuck Todd here in Washington, and since it's 4 o'clock on the live version of this show, it is the close of another volatile day on Wall Street. As we look right now, these are the live pictures from the New York Stock Exchange, where markets are grappling with another ailing bank. This one, not a U.S. bank, but a Swiss banking giant called Credit Suisse, which said it had found material weakness in its financial reporting. That news, not surprisingly, spooked markets in general. Most of the major U.S. indices closed down today, not massively. At one point, the Dow was down a robust 600 points, but it ended up down a little less than 300. Every major U.S. bank stock was down today, for those wondering. Credit Suisse plunged 30% at one point today after its largest shareholder, the Saudi National Bank, said they would not give it any additional financial assistance. And just last hour came the news that the Swiss National Bank would provide the bank with a financial backstop if necessary, kind of like how our Federal Reserve did that with the Silicon Valley Bank. Credit Suisse said yesterday that it had lost $8 billion last year and that it was struggling to reconcile its own accounting books. Needless to say, it has been an unsettling couple of days for the banking sector, following the Federal Reserve's move over the weekend to provide U.S. banks with the most sweeping backstop since the 2008 financial crisis. But we're going to turn now and lead our show going forward with what is perhaps a very significant development in American politics that could have profound implications for the future of democracy and the global order. And if that sounds like a big deal, it's because this is a big deal. Right now, both frontrunners for the Republican presidential nomination have publicly said they are against additional U.S. support to Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion. Former President Trump criticized the U.S. aid to Ukraine when the war began. And as an announced candidate, he said he trusts Putin more than some U.S. intelligence official. And now his chief rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, is staking out a similarly skeptical position on the U.S.'s support for Ukraine. Answering a questionnaire from Fox's Tucker Carlson, DeSantis wrote, quote, "While the U.S. has many vital national interests, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them." Territorial dispute. That's not just being an America firster. That is totally having a different view of what Europe even means, what NATO means, and what the threat from Russia is. DeSantis went on. The Biden administration's virtual blank check funding of this conflict for as long as it takes, without any defined objectives or accountability, distracts from our country's most pressing challenges. DeSantis' remarks buck Republican orthodoxy, or at least as what you might have thought Republican orthodoxy was in a pre-Trump era, but they're hardly an outlier in a party's base that has moved much closer to Trump on this matter. But DeSantis' position is at odds with much of the governing class of the Republican Party. And several senators have already voiced their displeasure with this DeSantis move.
I'm very disturbed that he feels that way. I think clearly we have an interest in Eastern Europe.
The majority opinion among Senate Republicans is that the United States has a vital national security interest there in stopping Russian aggression, and that's certainly the view I have.
You're welcome to ask this question. Are Senate Republicans at odds with their own Republican base? That might be the case here. But this DeSantis evolution on this issue is also raising some big questions about him and his party, because as a congressman, he criticized President Obama when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, and he called for U.S. arms to be sent to Ukraine and allies in the region. But now DeSantis' position is so closely aligned with Trump's That former UN ambassador and current 2024 candidate Nikki Haley said DeSantis was, quote, copying the former president. We should note, according to our recent NBC News poll, 63% of Republicans now oppose Congress providing more funding and weapons to Ukraine. So this move by DeSantis does put him in line with the GOP base, puts him on the opposite side of where Biden is, arguably both good political moves for him, and gets him on the opposite side of the Washington Republican establishment. And of course, Trump was trying to paint him as a member of that. So tactically, this may be what this is all about, just tactics. But all of this comes as the situation in Ukraine is actually becoming more acute for the United States. Russian fighter jets collided with an American drone over the Black Sea yesterday in what the U.S. is calling a brazen violation of international law. In the aftermath, Russia's foreign minister says relations between the United States and his country are probably at their lowest levels, perhaps in a generation. Moments ago, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he's been in contact with his Russian counterpart over the incident. So in that respect, at least there's a dialogue there. Remember, we're still waiting for dialogue over the Chinese spy balloon with China.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.